I always like to tie these conversations back and these books back to their relevance to the modern world. And I think maybe Metamorphosis is more relevant now than it's been in a while. And I'm going to talk about it in relation to the lockdowns that much of the world has experienced. And I think I would maybe go as far as to say, what some people experienced in lockdown, especially in places like Melbourne, was Kafkaesque to a degree. Peumike, what do you think about that?
No, I absolutely do. And even just the idea of COVID, it's quite an absurd kind of proposition, right? And the lockdowns as well, and the bureaucracy surrounding that. And for that to be kind of thrust onto us as a society, I can almost liken that to Gregor waking up as a cockroach, because it's just such a bizarre, and the word unprecedented comes out again, but an unprecedented circumstance that we find ourselves in. And I think the idea with the Kafkaesque is that it's not so much as trying to reverse what had already happened, but dealing with what's happening in the present time and making sure that you acknowledge it for what it is, and then trying to work out what the best solution is going forward. And I think some of the issues, and I don't want to get too political, with the government response to it, is they weren't necessarily dealing with what the crisis was at the given time. They were almost trying to reverse the situation to a point in which it impeded on everything that was good and fun about the society. So I think that's where this kind of interplay happens. And also the bureaucracy which came into place as well with the lockdowns, I think is indicative of the kind of work structure in place in the Metamorphosis in the book as well. So we see those parallels there, which are quite pertinent as well.
Yeah, Lorraine, I think Peumike has touched on some really good points there. And I think there is definitely a connection to people feeling very powerless at this time, or trapped within kind of bureaucratic mazes, and feeling, definitely like they don't have control anymore. That kind of enters into the concept of the Kafkaesque. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'd absolutely agree with that. And I think adding to it, the other thing that Kafka does so well, particularly through this story, is to highlight the importance of connectedness to what it means to be human. The actual physical transformation that Gregor goes through, he might be in a different form, but he's not actually physically separated from his family. He's still in the next room. They're still in the same house. The actual story takes place in a very small area, and yet the emotional disconnect between them is just immediate. And I think that does reflect, what people have felt over the course of this year. It's that lack of human connection and that ability to have people with you that has been just so devastating for so many people. And that's something that, we can measure direct health outcomes in terms of how many people have been infected, how many people have died. And in that respect, Australia's result to the pandemic has been absolutely, incredible by international standards. But I think, what this book shows us is there is a cost more than just the direct physical transformation. It's actually the emotional cost to Gregor, and the cost to his family in terms of the inability for him to work and to contribute and to support them, that really is the most central part of that transformation.
Yeah, and just to draw on from that point that Lorraine was talking about how now, because of lockdowns, a lot of people have had to lost their jobs, right? And this is kind of the situation that Gregor finds himself in as well. It's the idea that now, because he's not contributing anymore, he doesn't have the kind of same value almost in the family structure. He's almost lost his sense of purpose, his sense of direction in this present time. And that's actually quite a powerful thing, especially for someone who was previously the breadwinner of the family, someone who was almost a rock, the foundation of the family. To now go into this situation of powerlessness, that has devastating consequences on one's mental health. Like, it cannot be understated, because it's a complete role reversal, right? You're not doing what you used to do before, and now your kind of essence of what you've been doing your entire life, because especially for Gregor, his work was his life and supporting his family, right? you just lose that. And the mental health consequences because of that is devastating. And that's one of the reasons why in the medical profession, when you're conducting a medical history, one of the most important questions to ask is, how is your work? How are you supporting your family? What kind of social structures do you have? Because the consequences that has for one's mental health, and I think we can see that now with the growing problems with mental health with a lot of Victorians, a lot of Australians, is this the importance that has on our being, and to disregard that, especially with the kind of measures that's been taking place in the Victorian government and the Australian government, is quite ridiculous, to be honest.